It's game time. If you enjoy the content, make sure to like the video and subscribe. Control of the center with Effa, preparing to develop other pieces and creating space for the bishop to potentially pin on the knight on c6.
This is a book move. The opening is called King's Pawn Game.
Knight to f3 is the best move.
Knight to c6.
This is a book move. The opening is called Ruy Lopez.
Developing the knight to a strong central square, preparing to control the pawn to d5 square and potentially attacking the bishop on b5.
Kingside castle is the best move.
This is a book move. The opening is called Ruy Lopez Berlin defense. Rio gambit accepted.
Pawn to d4.
Developing the knight to a strong central square, preparing to control the pawn to d5 square and potentially attacking the white pawn on f4.
Bishop to a4 is the best move.
Pawn captures on c6.
Pawn captures on e5.
Attacking the knight on f6, preparing to develop the rest of the pieces and putting pressure on black's position while also eyeing the pawn on f5.
I played qx8 plus to put pressure on black's position and gain a strong initiative. The pin on black's knight on pawn to d6 forces them to respond, while the fork on their king and queen creates a threat. This move sets the stage for a strong attack on the kingside.
King captures on d8 is best. This defends a pawn on c7.
Pawn to h3 is excellent. Knight to c3 is best. This develops a knight.
King to e8.
Knight to c3.
Pawn to h5 is excellent. Pawn to a5 is best.
Bishop to f4.
Bishop to e6 is the best move.
Rook from file to d1.
Bishop to e6.
Knight to g5 is the best move.
Rook to h6.
Attacking the knight on f5, creating a strong initiative and putting pressure on black's position, while also opening lines for the rooks to potentially attack the kingside.
Rook captures on e6 is best.
Preparing to develop the queenside pieces and control the pawn to d5 square, rook from file left to e1 supports the central pawn structure and prepares to potentially play pawn to d3 or d4, putting pressure on black's position.
Rook to d8 is the best move.
Rook captures on d8 check.
King captures on d8.
King to f1.
Attacking the kingside pawn structure, creating space for the bishop to potentially pin the black knight on c6 and preparing to develop the queenside pieces.
Knight to e4 is best.
Pawn to c5 is the best move.
Pawn to c3.
King to d7 is a defensive move, supporting the pawn on pawn to e5 and preparing to develop the queenside pieces. It also slightly weakens the kingside, but in this position, it's a necessary move to maintain pawn structure and control of the center.
Developing the knight to a strong central square, preparing to control the pawn to d5 square and potentially pinning the black knight on d6.
Pawn to g5 is excellent. This attacks the bishop. Rook to a6 is best. This defends a pawn on a7. This attacks the pawn. This move gains a tempo.
Bishop to h2 is the best move.
Rook to a6 is best. This defends a pawn on a7. This attacks the pawn.
Pawn to a3.
Pawn to b5 is the best move.
King to e2.
Rook to a4.
Developing the knight to a strong central square, preparing to control the pawn to d5 square and potentially pinning the black knight on d6.
Pawn to b5 is best. This defends a rook on a4.
Rook to d1 is the best move.
Pawn to c4 check is best.
King to c2 is a solid move, supporting the pawn structure and preparing to develop the rest of the pieces. It also slightly weakens the kingside, but this is mitigated by the presence of the bishop on c4, which can potentially pin the black knight on c6.
King to d5.
Pawn to g4 is the best move.
Knight to g7 is good. Rook to a6 is best.
Knight to f3 is excellent. This defends a bishop on h2. Pawn to g4 is best.
Attacking the knight on f6, preparing to develop the rest of the pieces and putting pressure on black's position, while also eyeing the potential weakness on c6.
Preparing to develop the queenside pawns and support the pawn to d5 pawn, while also eyeing the kingside and preparing to potentially play d5. This move also slightly weakens the kingside pawn structure, but is a necessary step to control the center and create space for the pieces to develop.
Pawn to f6.
Knight captures on g5 is the best move.
Pawn to c5 is the best move.
Pawn captures on d4.
Pawn captures on g5 is best. This defends a pawn on h4. This captures a higher value piece.
Attacking the black king, creating a potential fork with the bishop on c4 and putting pressure on the black position, aiming to gain a material advantage and create a strong initiative.
King catches on d4.
Rook catches on b5 is best. This captures a free pawn.
Rook to a6 is best. This attacks the pawn.
Rook to e5.
Rook to c6 is good. This defends a pawn on c7. Rook to b6 is best.
Rook to e1 is the best move.
Preparing to develop the queenside pawns and potentially create a passed pawn on the queenside. Pawn to a6 also slightly weakens the kingside pawn structure, but the potential long-term benefits outweigh the short-term costs.
King to d2 is a safe and prophylactic move, preventing black from launching a potential pawn storm on the kingside. It also supports the central pawn structure and prepares to develop the queenside pieces.
Attacking the kingside pawn structure, rook to b6 prepares to potentially launch a kingside attack, putting pressure on black's position and forcing them to respond to the potential threat.
King to c2 is best. This defends a pawn on b2.
Pawn to c5 is excellent. Rook to c6 is best. This defends a pawn on c7.
Pawn to a4 is the best move.
King to e3.
Bishop to g1 check.
King to e2.
Rook to e5 check.
King to f1 is best. This creates a fork on bishop and pawn.
Bishop to e3.
King captures on g2.
Bishop captures on g5.
Bishop captures on g5.
Rook captures on g5 check is best. This creates a fork on king and pawn. This move gains a tempo.
King captures on h3 is a clever move to challenge black's pawn on h4, creating a potential weakness and gaining a small advantage. This move also puts pressure on black's position, making it harder for them to maneuver.
Attacking the kingside pawn structure, rook to g6 prepares to launch a potential kingside attack, putting pressure on black's position and creating a weakness on the kingside. This move is a key part of the Berlin defense strategy.
Rook to b3 is a strong move, attacking black's pawn on pawn to c6 and preparing to develop the rest of the queenside pieces. It also pins black's knight on c6, gaining a strategic advantage.
Preparing to develop the queenside pawns and support the pawn to d5 pawn, while also eyeing the kingside and preparing to potentially play d5. This move also slightly weakens the kingside pawn structure, but is a necessary step to maintain flexibility and control of the center.
Rook to e3 is a strong move, attacking black's pawn on pawn to e5 and preparing to develop the rest of the pieces. It also pins black's knight on c6, gaining a strategic advantage.
Rook to g7 is the best move.
King to h2.
King to d2 is best. This attacks the rook. This move gains a tempo.
Pawn to c3 check.
Pawn captures on c3 is best. This is a trade. The game is over. White wins.